I had just buried my father when my world tilted into a nightmare. Driving back from his funeral still in my black suit, I turned onto my land and saw a white auction tent pitched on my lawn. Bright pennant flags snapping in the wind and strangers wandering through my rose garden with numbered paddles in their hands. They were circling like vultures, and in the middle of it all stood Karen Duncan, president of the Elk Ridge Estates HOA, smiling like a queen at my father's wake. My family's 4-generation ranch was about to be sold off in a fake auction while I was still grieving. The dust from West Texas clung to my suit like a reminder of where I'd just come from. I had driven all night to get back to Colorado, hoping to sit on my porch swing and breathe mountain air that smelled like home. Instead, I pulled up to this circus rows of folding chairs and auctioneer's podium, even portable toilets lined up by my barn. My barn, where my father's tools still hung neatly on the walls. Karen stood there immaculate, her blonde helmet of hair flawless, her white pantsuit spotless clipboard tucked under her arm like a scepter. When she saw me, she smiled slow and predatory. "Cole," she said, her voice syrupy and cruel, "I'm so sorry for your loss, but this is a legally sanctioned community sale. You're behind on dues, $80,000 in liens and fees. We had no choice." I stared at her still in my funeral clothes, dust settling on my shoes. "This is my property," I said low steady. "Get your people and your tent off my land." She laughed, sharp and brittle. "Oh, Cole, you don't understand. This isn't your land anymore." She waved a stack of papers, official-looking with seals and stamps. "Court order. You have 5 minutes to move that truck before it's towed." My father paid every bill the day it arrived. He hated the HOA with a passion, and he made sure we were never under their thumb. I knew these papers were fake, but Karen wore them like armor, counting on people seeing ink and signatures and not asking questions. She turned her back on me, ordered her goons to call a tow truck, and dismissed me from my own ranch like I was trespassing. I drove down to the end of the driveway, only to find 2 of her polo-shirted enforcers blocking it with sawhorses and a rope. Clipboards in hand, puffing their chests, they told me I wasn't on the list. They called me sir, with smug smirks told me to leave. I told them once, "This is Bishop Ranch. Move the barricade." They didn't. So I pulled out my phone, pretended to dial my lawyer. I spoke calmly, trespassing, unlawful restraint, criminal charges. Their confidence cracked. Bullies don't expect calm resistance. But Karen had backup. Sheriff Miller pulled up in his cruiser. He'd known my dad for decades, a decent man worn down by years of paperwork and procedure. He took the folder Karen shoved at him, flipped through it, saw all the stamps and signatures. He frowned, conflicted, but in the end he muttered, "Cole, this looks legitimate. Without an injunction, I have to treat it as real." That moment crushed me. The law wasn't going to help. My neighbors were too afraid to speak. My father was gone. And I, standing there in a funeral suit surrounded by strangers bidding on my life, felt something I hadn't felt since combat: helplessness. I actually asked myself, maybe she's right. Maybe somehow my dad missed something. Maybe I've been blind. Maybe I really could lose everything. For a moment I wanted to walk away, let it burn, because fighting felt impossible. But then I remembered who I was: a soldier, my father's son, and this was his land. I couldn't abandon it, not while I still had breath. As the auctioneer shouted numbers, 500,000, 600,007. Each bid felt like a knife in my chest. I clenched my fists, silent, staring at the crowd, and then I heard the growl of a V8 engine. A black Ford Raptor barreled up my drive dust, boiling behind it. Out stepped Jake Mendez, my brother-in-arms, the man I trusted more than anyone. Tattoos up his arms, calm as stone, he gave me a nod that said, "I'm here. I've got your back." The crowd shifted instantly. People whispered his name, remembered the stories. Sheriff Miller's hand twitched on his gun but then dropped when he recognized Jake. Karen's smug grin faltered. Her goons froze. Jake didn't need to threaten anyone. He just stood there, radiating the kind of presence that makes cowards fold. He poured me a coffee from his thermos, handed it over like we were on patrol again. That simple gesture reminded me I wasn't alone. I opened my truck, pulled out a worn leather folder. Inside was the original deed to Bishop Ranch signed in 1888, plus a certified survey map from 6 months ago. Proof we were never under HOA control. I held it up steady as stone. Karen sneered, shouted that her order superseded everything. "Arrest him," she barked at Miller. Before he could act, a sedan rolled up. Out stepped Reed Johnson, my lawyer, briefcase in hand. He stormed forward and laid it all out. Every one of Karen's papers was forged. Wrong case numbers expired, notary seals, fake stamps. And the kicker, the shell company bidding on my ranch was registered to none other than Robert Duncan, Karen's husband. The crowd gasped. Even Miller's weary eyes hardened with anger. He'd been used. He turned on Karen with a look that said he'd had enough. Karen panicked. She grabbed the auctioneer's gavel, slammed it down, shrieked, "Sold. Sold to Mountain View Investments." It was desperate, pathetic. A last-ditch attempt to cling to power. That's when I knew words weren't enough. I walked into my father's house, lifted his Winchester Model 94 from above the fireplace, loaded a single round, and stepped back onto the porch. I didn't aim it at anyone. I didn't need to. I raised it to the berm, squeezed the trigger. The crack thundered across the valley, echoing off the Rockies. The crowd scattered like pigeons. Chairs toppled, people screamed. Robert Duncan bolted for his car. In seconds, the auction was over, the field clear. Smoke curled from the barrel as silence fell. I lowered the rifle. Karen stumbled, mascara streaked her clipboard flying. For the first time, she looked small, defeated. Sheriff Miller holstered his gun, walked past me, and put the cuffs on her himself. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit theft. Robert didn't escape either. They were done. And me. I stood there on my porch, the smell of gunpowder mixing with pine and dust, knowing I'd defended my father's legacy with the only thing that still mattered, resolve. Some things in this world aren't for sale, not at any price.